Well, welcome everyone to SETI's fifth session. Today, we're going to be talking about grants best practice, and boy, do we have a panel for you today. Before we get started, I did just want to send out thoughts and prayers to all of those that have been affected from Helene throughout those states, as well as everybody in Florida that's bracing for Milton and what's coming in now. Everybody here at SETI, all our presenters, send their thoughts, prayers, and hope that everybody does well and recovers quickly. With that, we're going to get started today. Again, today's session is grants best practice, and we have an incredible panel for you. First, I'd like to thank all of our SETI 2024 sponsors, especially CIW, our title sponsor, for their outstanding support, and also AMCA and ProTrain for their generous contributions. Your partnership made this event a success. Thank you to all of these listed here as our sponsors. A little bit of SETI housekeeping. This SETI session is being recorded. Links to the PDFs of the presentation and the recordings will be available. Attendees are automatically muted when joining. And please, those that have joined us today, use the Q&A box located on the lower navigation bar for all questions, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the session. And also, please post to social media using our hashtag #CETI2024. And if you haven't already, definitely join the SETI alumni group on LinkedIn. First, I want to introduce our phenomenal three panel members today. First, Timothy Nelson. Tim is currently serving as the Dean of the School of Transformation at Dene College in Northern Arizona. He is a leader committed to pushing beyond the traditional class-to-career model. His focus is on propelling the growth and advancement of Dene College, fostering an environment that champions academic excellence and personal and community development. Prior to his current role, he served as tribal administrator for various tribal communities in Arizona and in California. His tenure was marked by effective management and oversight of tribal programs, which were supported by a range of diverse funding sources. His commitment to fostering collaboration between tribal communities and local organizations was evident in his proactive approach to exploring and engaging partnerships. Tim's academic journey includes a bachelor's and a master's of business administration from Regis University in Denver, Colorado. He is also pursuing his Doctor of Business Administration at Grand Canyon University, focusing on business research and data analytics. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
Our second panelist is Ren Parkey. Ren is a social entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in innovative design thinking, research, education, and networking. He is dedicated to transforming the education system through work-based learning, and social enterprise. Ren is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Ideal Institute of Technology, located in New Jersey, the first of its kind career college where enrolled students get paid to attend school by participating in work-based learning through social enterprise. Welcome, Ren. And our third panelist, John Kressler. John serves as the Assistant Director of Career and Workforce Education at Butler Community College in Butler County, Kansas, near Wichita. With 20 plus years of experience in higher education and workforce development, John has been instrumental in shaping programs that align educational outcomes with the needs of the job market. His efforts focus on building strong partnerships between the college and local businesses and ensuring that students are equipped with the skills necessary for success in their chosen careers. John's dedication to workforce education has helped countless individuals find meaningful employment, contributing to the economic vitality of the region. Under his leadership, Butler Community College has become a key player in workforce training, recognized for its innovative approach to education that meets the demands of both students and employers. John continues to be a driving force in the community, fostering growth and development through education. Welcome, John, and welcome to all three of our panelists.
Hello.
So your takeaways from this grant panel today, we'll be covering three topics: identifying grant opportunities, where you'll learn to locate and identify grant opportunities that align with your continuing ed department's goals and community needs, and getting insight from our three panelists. We'll talk about securing grants, discovering some best practices, and writing compelling grant proposals that will increase your chance of securing funding. And finally, we'll talk about utilizing grants effectively, making sure that your compliance and your funds are allocated properly and that you set yourself up for success to get another grant, possibly from that same source. Key takeaways: techniques for finding and identifying grants suitable for funding national certification training programs, some insight into crafting successful grant proposals that resonate with funders, and some strategies from our panelists for managing and optimizing grant resource to deliver that high quality, in-demand job training. So let's dive right in. Identifying grant opportunities. I'm going to be asking each panelist this question, and we'll get insight from each of them on their experience associated with this question. Let's start with Ren. Ren, can you give us an example of how you locate and identify grant opportunities that align with your continuing education department's goals and community needs?
Sure. Thank you for having me in this conversation. A little bit of a background of Ideal Institute of Technology. We're like a vocational school in southern New Jersey, focus on a workforce development program for at-risk youth. That's the way we start. And I always say this way, that in our country, biggest challenge is nobody wants to pay for the education unless there is a funding provided. So all the service provider educators, they always look for opportunity where we get the grants. And the first ever grant that I received in 2016 was from our local workforce development board for a out-of-school youth or at-risk youth grant. And that was a VOA funding for a $60,000 grant. And at that time, I had no clue that how the grant works, what it takes to receive the grant, execute the grant, administer the grant, and provide an outcome. So from that day to now, we manage around $3.5 million a year grants from a various organization. So I always get excited when we're talking about where to find the grants and how to identify them and how to administer. And I usually say this as my experience, that look for the organization and agency who is looking to provide that outcome that your organization is having. So for Ideal, we are a workforce training provider. So we started with who is funding the training. And because of the new organization in a small capacity at those days in 2016, somebody pointed me out to local workforce development board, and they use the out-of-school youth grant as a RFP. But from there to now, to locating the grants, there are various possibilities, depends on your organization size. Foundations, they put out RFPs and they provide the grant. Local Workforce Development Board, State Department of Labor, especially when we're servicing the VOA community, Department of Labor, at least in New Jersey, put out a lot of different programs that we seek. And then federal programs, grant.gov is very sourceful. And there are a lot of consultants, they also do the grant search. But we do that in-house, just me, myself, and Irene, our small team. We search for all the agencies and organizations who is looking for an outcome in terms of a career development training and a job placement, and if they have a funding opportunity. And sometimes just sending out a few emails and being a vendor or being on an email list, that helps identify the ground.
Ren, thanks. Those tips and tricks and insights were extremely helpful for those that are listening and paying attention. So thank you for giving that insight piece. John, from your perspective, same question. Can you give us an example of how you locate and identify grant opportunities that align with your needs?
Sure. So yeah, the Career and Workforce Department that I oversee with my boss, Director Michelle Reuter, We primarily focus on non-credit contract training, open enrollment, certification courses. And the college has a dedicated grant person under the institutional research department. So historically, the philosophy is to primarily go after funding for academic programs. That's loosened up a little bit in the last few years. We have a new person in that role, and she will send us opportunities to look at that kind of align with the college, but not everything that we get that comes across our desk lines up exactly with our mission. So we're a small department, so we don't have a lot of the throughput to be able to handle a lot of some of these larger grants. So we don't go after a lot of them. One of the recent grants we had is actually, it's not a grant officially. It was some funding created by the state legislature that is being overseen by KBOR, which is a Kansas Board of Regents. It's based on student enrollment for all the community colleges in the state. So the first round, we got $1.4 million designed specifically for upskilling and reskilling the area workforce through non-credit training. A lot of the industry thought that they had enough dollars for academic programming, but they didn't have any funding available to help pay for non-credit. So that was kind of the genesis of this whole project that the state legislature put on. The only requirement provided by the state is that the trainee must be employed or be a resident of the state of Kansas, track numbers of people served, companies that benefited. There's no formal reporting structure to be prepared for. But they said to be prepared to answer any questions they might come back with in 5 years. So you have to kind of anticipate, what they might be looking for at that time. So most of the things that we get just kind of fall into our lap. So we have kind of a different perspective, but we do go after some grants when they do come across and align with what it is we're wanting to do out of our department.
Excellent. Thanks, John. And that perspective on things that are federal flow through or things that are happening to the state and state initiatives and working with your academic department. Great insight. Thank you. Tim, same question to you. Can you give us an example of how you locate and identify grant opportunities there at Dene?
I'm going to have to feed off of what John just mentioned. We are a professional development certification and certificate program as well in our community. So we look for grant opportunities that will supplant our mission with the School of Transformation. So we are looking at grants that we have to make sure that the grantors organization and their goals and priorities match up with what we are trying to accomplish. And because of that, we really are looking at focusing on a particular grant for a specific purpose. And so we are looking at creating an executive summary that addresses the needs of the grantor. And on top of that, we're looking at hopefully being funded for an opportunity for our communities and for the people who are underserved, or either unemployed, underemployed, and for them to gain those opportunities in the community for gainful employment. So that's our biggest focus in making sure that we come across as an organization that will be able to provide those opportunities for not only our community member, but for also meeting the goals of our school and for the college itself. So, and I think for the most part, that alignment really falls into place in reviewing the grant opportunity itself. If you don't review the grant opportunity, you really don't understand what the grantor's goals and priorities are, so you can't write specifically to that grantor. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. And that opportunities and those outcomes that each of you had mentioned are vital when looking at the grants and making sure that you're serving the particular goals and outcomes necessary for that grant. So all three of you, great insight. Jumping to our second question. We'll start with John on this one. What are some best practices for writing compelling grant proposals that could increase your chance of securing funding for national certification training programs or regional or state needs? John.
Yeah, most of the grant funded opportunities we get are as a vendor for an actual grant manager. So these guys aren't really in a position to fulfill the training requirements, so we're kind of a subcontractor. But we still have to submit a proposal. So we have ongoing training contracts, for example, with Department of Children and Families, Sedgwick County. We're on the WIOA state ETP list. So we're a rural college on the border of the largest population center in the state of Kansas. So most of the WIOA dollars that the region gets are kind of spent before it gets to us. So we have to go out and work with other workforce districts to tap into some of their dollars. We've used things like Pathway Home that are kind of a diversion through using WIOA dollars through other entities and things like that. So so we do a lot of WIOA funded training through folks like ProTrain, Ed2Go, Upright. So we do utilize some of those other funding sources out there, but most of the time it's we submit a proposal through somebody that's actually managing the grant.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And yeah, partnering and that networking component piece and being a part of existing grants that entities have is always a vital source for continuing ed departments. So you're not atypical, and appreciate you sharing that information of how it works there at Butler. Tim, same question to you. What are some of the best practices that you have found for writing compelling grant proposals that have increased your chance of securing funding and assisting and changing the lives that I know you're doing there at Dene?
Well, thank you for the question, Mike. I think one of the things that really help writing a compelling grant proposal is understanding the needs of not only the organization that's providing the funding. And fortunately, we were in a position to apply for a grant, which we were successful at in landing this grant. And a lot of it had to do with understanding what the parameters of that grantor's needs and priorities were. So they were focusing on healthcare, IT, and housing or infrastructure development. Luckily for us, our partnership with ProTrain provided us the opportunities to actually focus on those priorities from the organization. And we defined our problem statement to coincide with what their needs and priorities were. So because of that, we provided an appropriate solution to the problem. We outlined the healthcare course content that we have, the certification processes, and it led to us developing a working relationship and a collaboration for Indian Health Services. And hopefully that ends up becoming a partnership that would be further enhanced to provide healthcare training and services for the Navajo people on the Navajo Nation. We're reaching out to other smaller tribes to provide those opportunities with them as well. And so it's the measurable goals and objectives are that we are starting out relatively small, but we have an anticipation of growth and collaborating with other partners that need the same or similar services. So that we could just demonstrate the impact that we're having by increasing those opportunities for not only ourselves, but surrounding tribal nations. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Tim. And that crawl, walk, run philosophy is something that in the CE world, but in many aspects of life and business, we all have to follow. And so starting off slowly and building that up, but congratulations on the success that you're already having with Indian Health Services and the pharmacy tech program, as well as your solar technician program. Ren, same question to you. There at Ideal, as you jumped from 60,000 to 3 million, there definitely were some best practices that I'm sure that you can give to our participants here today, as well as those that will be listening on the recording. What are some of those best practices that you've had for writing compelling grant proposals there at Ideal?
So I am a part of a writing team that identify the grants and then we write it. So the most important few parts that we focus at Ideal is statement of need. I echo what Tim said, that look for what grantor's mission is for putting out that funding, why they wanted to spend that dollar, what kind of outcome they're looking for. And then in our grant application, we put it in that why in our region, we have a need for this funding. And we add some statistics to it in terms of our local economy and local workforce development need. Along with that, we also identify our organization's capacity and a partner network and our collaboration and affiliations. Nowadays, last 2-3 years, we are seeing more success because of our partner network, support network. So we are good at providing the workforce training, national certification training, but we collaborate with other organizations who provide the wraparound and support services. And our grantors, they value that collaboration because that's ultimately help in our client success. And a third, but not the less important part, is our budget and budget narrative in terms of where the allocation is asked and then how we allocate those expenses. So those are the writing part that I would identify in a proposal where we seen the better result when we address these things into the grant writing.
Excellent. Thanks, Ren. And what a great lead in from the budgeting component piece, as well as the outcomes and everything. And so now all of a sudden, the work to write those grants or to partner, even with the flow through component pieces or with other organizations, now all of a sudden it's like, yes, the celebration is quick. We got that grant. Heck yeah. Then it's like reality sets in. It's like, okay, now we got to figure out not only how are we going to do the work and meet the outcomes, but how are we going to make sure that we managed that grant properly, as well as that we comply with any of the grant requirements. So jumping into that question, celebration is quick-lived, but now you get to actually really serve those students and everything that you wanted to do with that grant. So Tim, how do you make sure that you manage those grant funds effectively and maximize that outcome to ensure compliance for those grant requirements?
I think you made a statement that is very important. How do we maintain compliance? Well, it all starts with our budgeting plan and our outline for our budget. How are we going to spend money? Are there certain percentage ratios that we need to identify? Are we in a position where we have to pay indirect costs? Fortunately, for one of the grants that we just received, they eliminated indirect costs. So we get to retain all of the funds allocated to us. In that, we have staffing, we have, I would say 75% of our grant is going to direct services. So for participant fees, for coursework, books, laptops. And lastly, we want to help individuals who go through the course content under the Pharmacy Tech program. We have identified that externships or internships with IHS are a on-the-job training opportunity that is not paid. So we're looking at providing stipends for those individuals who finalize their in-class training. They move on to their hands-on component, and at the end, they can sit for the national exam. Well, in the interim, when they're having that hands-on portion, they have no income or anything that they can use to rely on to get to and from the work site and cover their initial costs. So identifying those items in your budget are a big plus for not only the organization, but for creating the maximum impact for that grant. Of course, we're going to be tracking and monitoring how we process students in various areas. Like I said, initially, we were asked to focus on healthcare, IT, and infrastructure and housing. Well, the easiest ones to work on are, for us, healthcare and IT. Infrastructure, not so much, because we have a collaboration with a neighboring tribal college that does do a lot of construction and infrastructure type training. So we have allowed them to focus on that portion of it. on our side, we continue with our monitoring. And then to ensure the compliance that Mike mentioned earlier, we report regularly on our expenditures, what goals have been accomplished, on our horizon outlook of the program outcome. So how many people are we serving on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis? All that information is going to be compiled along with our financials and expenditures to create a vivid outlook, really, and being transparent to the grantor so that they see, oh yeah, our money is being spent. We're seeing results. They're providing the data and analysis of the outcomes of the grant. So I think that's the biggest thing, is providing the outcome and milestones accomplished to the grantor. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Tim. And some key points there for the monthly reporting that's necessary, as well as the budget upkeep to make sure that the funds are going properly. But transparency, what a great question. And also appreciated the information on collaboration, because, you know, always playing, going back to the playground rules of making sure that whoever's on the playground and properly playing with those within your region, and staying sometimes in your lane, and each of you doing your part is definitely a part of it as well too. So thanks for sharing both of those insights, Tim. Ren, same question to you. You've got multiple grants. How do you manage those and maximize the impact and the outcomes, and also make sure that you ensure the compliance with the grant requirements?
So I'll tell you what my early learning was when I received the $60,000 grant, and the next year another 60,000. I had no idea that in our grant world, you don't use it, you lose it. So I learned it quickly that planning the budget is very important, and then spending down on a timely manner. It's very important. So I would say to do the proper grant execution, the recruitment of your level of service, whichever way in a training is, those numbers, performance, and documentation on the student's journey. So, and that includes a proper invoicing and proper budgeting when it comes to spend down. So for us, the reason for our success is that historically, when we started our school youth program or workforce development program from the county, they used to refer us a client. We went extra mile and start innovation in us recruiting the clients also. So every year now, for last 5 years, we request increase of level of service. So if we get funding for serving 100 clients in a 6 month, we show the progress and our enrollment and develop service, and we request funder that we need a 20% increase. And we do that by adding additional partner network who refer us a client and he provide a wraparound services. And then we report that as an outcome. So having a recruitment strategy and having an execution strategy of once you recruit the clients and the students, and providing a training, making sure that they are successful in receiving an industry value credential and a placement, because all our workforce training is getting measured as completion of a training, achieving industry value credential, and job placement. So we do that with the employer network and a partner network, and then report that through the weekly timesheets, monthly, depends on an agency that's funding, how they set it up in their requirement of reporting, but monthly reporting on a timely manner. Because think about whoever is receiving that reporting, they probably working with the multiple organizations that they're funding. So you make their life easy. I look at it as agencies who are funding as a business, and those people who are working in that business to receive your reporting, if you make their life easy, you give them a perfect reporting, you give them perfect invoicing, then they like you and they give you a repeat business. So that's the way I look at it, and that's the how we are receiving similar grant. It's competitive bid, but we'll still get selected year after year through the performance and making the grantors team members life easy.
Excellent. Thank you, Ren. And that devil in the details with with anything associated with a grant as well as other things is so key. And, and the written word is forever. And so that transparency and that reporting becomes so vital and everything with it. But also two key things that you've mentioned is that it leads to continued funding, as well as even possibly increased funding when you do the reporting properly and you meet those outcomes. So thank you, Ren. John, same question to you.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about, some of the ones that you work with. I know that, there's some WIOA requirements that you may have to deal with even as a vendor. But then also, even with that state piece, is they're not asking it for something today, but they might ask for you from a year from now. So it sounds like you're preparing yourself, even when you don't have detailed compliance with grant requirements. So what do you think about this question, John?
Yeah. So it makes it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you can kind of go out and feel like Santa Claus and give away all this money, and you've never been told, what it is you have to report on. But internally, we made the decision to track as much information as we could. So we set up a spreadsheet inside Teams that we could all collaborate on. We had, these are potential opportunities to work with some of our existing partners. These are potential opportunities to bring in new partners. These are some projects that we want to work on. And then as we move through the process, we just move them across the different tabs on the spreadsheet. And then as the invoices came in, we tracked it all at the very end. So we did a very good job internally. We're not used to handling grants like this. So we were kind of building the airplane while it was flying. So, but a lot of learning, a big learning curve. I felt like our team did a very good job. We were very successful at it. And then, so about 6 to 8 weeks into the process, we're kind of humming along and everything's going really well. Leadership kind of bopped in and said, "So how's that grant going you guys are working on?" It's like, "Well, we've given away almost $1 million so far." And there's a gasp and a, clutching of pearls. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, 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 we didn't think you'd be that successful. So we started having kind of the microscope put on us, which is fine. We accept, having a little bit of oversight, because we're like drunken sailors out there giving away all this free training. So, so we did have a little more oversight. We kind of shifted our priorities a little bit internally about where we were focusing the dollars, and other parts of the college were wanting to earmark some of that. But a lot of the training went to working with third-party vendors like ProTrain and Ed2Go. We also reached out to a healthcare system locally that we'd never worked with in the past, and kind of built a relationship with those folks. So it opened up a lot of opportunities for us to get into areas that we normally don't get into. So then you fast forward to fiscal year 25, so we get the next round of funding, and now we're very careful about, so we actually put together a steering committee. So everybody, all the stakeholders in the college that have something to do with the decision making, are all along in the process. We've been given a little bit more, a few more requirements coming back from KBOR and the state, to just track students served, companies served, and then a list of maybe the top companies that we worked with. But we kind of go above and beyond what the actual requirements are of what they're looking for. So a lot of our training was for like SHRM, CP, SCP exam prep. We did a lot of our open enrollment classes. We did a fiber optics high school boot camp, gave away 2 sessions of CFOT training for free for area high school students. We do a weekend welding workshop. We partnered with a nonprofit that helps independent adults with autism find employment and housing. So we help them, give them some welding skills to maybe help them go out and get a job, so they can be self-sufficient. We did some CDL training for a local electrical and telecom provider. We've done some work with concrete masonry programs that had an ESL component to it, a housekeeping registered apprenticeship that we got approved by the state. Lots of local companies working on soft skills, leadership, and Microsoft Office programs. And we purchased some software. We got a registration management system from Zenigrade. We bought our own instance of Canvas for non-credit work. We couldn't access the academic Canvas side because you had to have a Butler domain to access that material. So we had to get our own instance of Canvas. So that we've really kind of built our infrastructure with this grant, but then we've also we've also used it to just create some great relationships and some great opportunities.
Awesome, John. Yeah, those relationships are so vital, and you made some key statements. Is that sometimes it's building it as you go, and I've never actually put in the saying building the airplane as you're flying it, but I'm sure if we actually did an internet search for that, it's probably going to say continuing ed and extended ed is probably the leading factor of that statement. But thank you for that insight on the various things, as well as all the various examples that you gave related to programs.
Sure.
So with that, thank you to our panelists for touching on those. Now we get to jump into some question and answer time. The chat is open, so if there are questions, please put those in the chat and I will get to those. But we actually do have a couple questions that we're going to kick off with. So let's start with the first question. What are some examples of how you have used the funding to meet the goals of the state legislature, region, and grant requirements? John, you were just touching on this, so I'm actually going to jump back to you because of what you mentioned in the various areas and stuff too. If you just want to elaborate just a little bit more on some of those examples that you were just giving.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for example, we reached out to ProTrain when we were given this opportunity for these dollars, and we were assisted in connecting with the Kansas Rural Water Association, and we did a bunch of Microsoft Office and QuickBooks training that went really well. I think they're very pleased with it. We've actually got a call back from them to present at their conference, to find a speaker to have them come in and present at their conference regarding retention and recruiting of city employees and municipality employees. So that's kind of an area we haven't got into before, but it did open some nice doors for us. We've also I mentioned the broadband fiber optics. That's got a lot of interest in our region. We can talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation, but the broadband funding is coming down the pike. So we'll be using some of those federal dollars for broadband expansion in the rural and getting those technicians trained.
Oh, that's awesome. And Tim, you were touching on, kind of the Indian Health Services with IHS and some of the things that the crawl, walk, run, and you're laying the foundation for. But it sounds like you've got some great plans for what you're already doing, but high hopes that it leads into other things. Maybe talk a little bit about that, as well as anything else you'd like to mention.
Sure. Excuse me. I was just thinking back when we initially started our school, and one of the first things was there was a meeting between the Navajo Nation president and the president of the college. And in that meeting, the outcome was the School of Transformation needs to provide more training and professional development opportunities for tribal employees. And when, the first training opportunity that we provided was grant writing and grant management opportunities for these employees. So that was our kickoff. It was very well received. We have been asked to come back and do other productivity training up, and they were very interested in it. And so when we started our collaboration with ProTrain, we do an email blast every month, and more specifically, our marketing campaign from our office focuses on tribal employees as well as tribal organizations. So in that sense, we're trying to address the needs of the constituency, the people that we serve, as well as meeting the funding goals for what was established for our school. So in that sense, I think we have branched out. We are looking at larger collaborative opportunities. We initially started with the Shiprock Area Indian Health Service, and we just met with Hopi Healthcare in Palaca, Arizona. Very well received, and they're looking at not only healthcare training, but also for their facilities management team. They found out that we have industrial training opportunities in like hazardous waste, OSHA 10, and also they have an interest in HVAC. And so now, just based on that meeting, we're looking at growing further out and serving a greater number of areas within the region. So that's pretty darn exciting for us.
That's awesome, Tim, and a lot on the horizon that I know you're excited about.
Yeah.
Before I jump into question 2, which we'll talk a little bit about the broadband piece that I know each of our 3 panelists are looking at it and potentially already involved with. But before I jump into that question, we did have a question from our audience, and I'm going to take this one to start with Ren. You know, you mentioned grants.gov and some other places that you search, as well as building those relationships that each of you have talked about, that sometimes you're partnering to be a vendor as with a grant. But the question was around what are some places that you can search for grants, like grants.gov, but then also associated with that is, and Ren, I'm jumping to you with this one because you talked a bit about this too, is how do you dig into that grant to see if it's relative to what you could offer? And I know you mentioned going kind of directly to the outcome component pieces of the grant, but any insight on that question of where to find grant opportunities that could match up with your continuing ed department, as well as then once you have that grant, making sure that you can provide the outcomes that are necessary for it and seeing if it matches directly with you?
Absolutely. So at Ideal, I'll speak to our perspective, where we search and how we search. The program is who we serve as a client. So we started with the youth program, and we're doing a adult vocational training as a private nonprofit, and we are on a ETPL for that. So, right. So we start identifying which organization or agency would want to fund a training for our client. So local workforce development board, we apply to be a vendor. And then we start getting their bid. So in New Jersey, particularly, the state and the county has a vendor registration. So we did the vendor registration, and we select what services we wanted to sell to the county. And based on that, whenever they have a contractor bid out, they would alert us an email. Now, usually my learning is their funding cycle is July 1 to June 30th. So February to April, all the RFPs comes out. Somebody just also asked in a chat that the Department of Labor's opportunity, when you find it, what you do. If you cannot get the full RFP, best thing is just to email them, and they will give you a package. In New Jersey, old way and a new way. Before, we used to email to the RFP full proposal. Now they use a software called IGX. And a Department of Correction, they use a software called GrantVantage. So it depends on the agency, but I would start with being registered vendor with all those agencies. And if you are reaching out to philanthropic organization, then there is a lot of third-party free or a low-cost grant listing that they provide state by state that you can spend $200-300 to have an account, and they would offer you a corporate grants or a philanthropic grants that you can. Some cases, like we provide a CTE endorsement and a work-based learning to the district, then we build district directly for our services. So district pays us as a vendor. It's not a grant. It's just a service contract. So it depends. But I would start registering with the Department of Labor, Department of Community Affairs in your state. If there is, we do have it in New Jersey, and we register because they put out a funding for a training. And local workforce development boards, we are registered in 7 counties around us, and we get a funding from every single one of them.
Excellent, Ren. Great insight. As well as for those that are not connected with their CTE, their career technology ed, with the school districts around you, that's another networking and opportunity and relationship that's great to build from a continuing ed standpoint, to network within the school systems, especially the high schools. So thanks for pointing that component out as in addition to some of your statements there, Ren. Tim or John, you want to add anything to that, or do you want me to jump into the broadband question?
Oh, no, go right ahead.
Sure. Let me put a little bit of information from our side. working with a tribal college or university gives us some advantages to finding grant opportunities. Not only are we listed as a vendor or as a recipient of various grants, but we are really looking into Department of Energy, Department of Defense. They have funding opportunities as well. And if you're a small organization, just make sure that you're credentialed as either a nonprofit or a government program that serves a disadvantaged community or a specific type of service that you provide that benefits the community. And those are all things that are going to be part of your priorities in establishing the opportunity to write for grants. And as Ren mentioned, read the grant, evaluate it, and see where you fit in, and then write to the grant where you fit in. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. And yeah, and that grant piece too is if a lot of times it's interesting that the full grant information isn't always posted, or the links could be actually not completely active. So looking to see who the grant entity is that usually there's an individual listed that would be the main person for each grant. You can reach out to them, and they're pretty quick at sending you a very large PDF file sometimes that you can dig into evening reading with. But John, I'm going to start with you on the broadband component piece, and then we'll jump around to Ren and Tim on that same question. But I know that's a big thing that's taken place in each of your areas and states. And so tell us a little bit more about the broadband opportunity initiative piece and how you're going to be assisting with parts of that there in Kansas.
Right. So our college is one of two in the state that has an existing fiber optic technician program. So there's several tens of millions of dollars going to be made available and part of that's going to go towards training of area technicians. So we're excited to be a part of that. Internally, we've talked about doing maybe some mobile labs to take out to rural Kansas to maybe get them certified. They can usually get a CFOT certification in about 2.5 days. So we want to give everyone the access and the availability to go out and do hands-on practical work. And then if needed, we also have the ability to do certifications in splicing and maintenance and testing. So we're just kind of waiting to hear from the government when we can get this thing up and running. So we're kind of excited and looking forward to being a part of that whole project. There's a lot of areas in Kansas that are really in dire need of communication technology. So exciting time right now for us in that space.
What an incredible opportunity. And congratulations on that too, John, as being 1 and 2 in Kansas. That's going to be able to provide that. What an impact. Ren, same thing for you. Are you involved with the broadband component piece, and what's your take on that there at Ideal in New Jersey?
Yeah, so New Jersey has a huge initiative on digital equity and meeting the need. And the Public Utility Agency just created an office of a broadband initiative. So it's a lot of federal funding is being available to all the states. And then biggest start is to have a workforce need and workforce training. So we are a part of the committee that does the kind of a need assessment in a state. And then once the RFP is ready, we will be applying for those training dollars, particularly in the fiber optic installers and the fiber slicing space. So those are the high-paying jobs and an entry-level job, both with the pathway. So we're also registered apprenticeship program. So we're adding work processes to provide that apprenticeship opportunity as well.
Awesome. And Tim, anything going to be happening there with Danae?
Funny you ask. Yes, I actually helped complete the application for the broadband initiative for our school and also for the tribe. We partnered and collaborated with the Navajo Nation. After I reviewed the opportunity, I started asking a lot of questions and submitting questions, and I was getting answers in part. But then the next thing you know, can you help us write this grant? And I was like, sure, why not? So I ended up actually becoming the grant manager for this grant application. So that opportunity is going to give us, just as John and Ren mentioned, the opportunity to provide training opportunities for cable splicers, repair people, maintenance. The other thing is the Navajo Nation has 110 chapters. In it, in this grant, there are 110 community representatives that will help each community establish their broadband system. They will be there for Q&A, for basically customer service. And so every community will have a position that will be able to be filled. And they're going to be our contact people on the ground and in the communities to show the communities how that community is going to benefit directly with the broadband initiative. Now, the big thing that occurred about 10 years ago was that the Navajo Nation's Utility Authority put in a fiber optic backbone from basically Farmington all the way to my hometown. And my hometown is a little place called Loop. We have 5 4G towers that are being upgraded to 5G that'll allow us to have greater bandwidth. But individually, the residential areas do not have fiber optic drops. So we're looking at developing that with that grant. So that's going to be something really interesting.
Yeah, I tell you, it's exciting for all three of you, but nationwide, the opportunities with the broadband initiative piece. So thanks for sharing what's happening in each of your areas and what you're going to be touching. So you have given our audience lots of information. I have a feeling that this session is going to be rewatched as people go back through to take notes and add to their notes that they've already taken. My favorite question always in interviews is kind of the wow question. You know, as you finish an interview at times, giving kind of why would you hire this particular individual? What stands them out above anybody and everything? And so thinking about that wow factor, if you could leave our audience with a wow takeaway or two, what do you want to make sure that everybody listening to this remembers as it relates to grants, grant opportunities, compliance, whatever you want to put with that? But what is your wow takeaway or takeaways that you want to give to the audience today? We'll start with John.
So yeah, if you work in the world of non-credit, like we do in our department at the college, stay very friendly with your school's grant person, because we're not always necessarily the priority in an academic environment. So, you know, if she likes donuts, take her donut, take her pitcher margarita, something, figure out something, but try to keep your grant person happy if you want to stay on their radar, and they'll reach out to you anytime something comes across that might be of interest, that might be a potential opportunity. So, but we keep busy enough to where we don't actively go out and search out grants, but we do have them come across frequently. So we do kind of pick and choose which ones, but it's always nice to have options and use those as a resource, those people in your institution as a resource to help you find some things that might not be on your radar.
Awesome. Thanks, John. And Ren, your wow factor.
Yeah, I was just paying attention to chat as well, so my bad.
No, thank you.
My wow factor in this space is learning how many different agency is in a need of organization like ours, who actually can provide the services. So while we're talking about where do we find a grant and how do we get it, vice versa, there are more than enough opportunities out there. It's just getting connected and then seeing the result that whoever we're serving, they're successful. So that's fulfilling factor for me in this space.
Excellent. And Mr. Tim.
I think our biggest wow factor right now is all the collaborative opportunities. As Ren mentioned, there are people out there who want these services that don't know where they're looking to. And in providing those opportunities, you just see their eyes light up and they're like, you guys do that? Wow, we want to do this and we want to do that. And that really is the wow factor for me in our organization, because the people see the opportunities without having to send somebody any great distance for training, because it becomes localized. They could do it from their place of business, or they could do it on their spare time from home. And I think that's the biggest takeaway for me on that.
So Tim, I want to thank you. I want to thank John. I want to thank Ren. You know, it's that celebration component piece we don't always get to as much as we'd like to. And I will get to Priscilla's question as well too. But I really want to thank the three of you, is because the impact and the life-changing component pieces that you're doing for so many people within your regions is not going unnoticed, and you don't get to thank yous as much as you usually do. But thank you for presenting today, and thank you for everything that you do and changing those lives, and those components that you do with everybody and everybody you serve and everything that you serve. I do see. Oh, Priscilla was just giving a big thank you and a wave to everybody, and so that's what I wanted to do too. Was thank our panelists again. Give them a huge round of applause. Standing ovation. I'll stand up. I'll give you that standing ovation.
Throw money.
There you go. Throw money. But I also want to thank our sponsors again. The SETI 2024 sponsors, especially CIW, our title sponsor, as well as AMCA and ProTrain for their generous contributions. But then also each of you there at Dene, Ideal, Butler Community College, for your time and contribution to this panel. So with that, I appreciate everybody, our panelists. Thank you, our participants. I hope you got a ton of information, and we look forward to seeing you at the next SETI presentation coming up in less than an hour. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.